Hi guys. So next is to actually work with the wildlife in Gorongosa just a little bit. So we hope to do this in the actual classroom because it's really fun to do this with you guys. But if it turns out that that's not possible for whatever reason, then this little tutorial will lead you through how to still get this Wildcam assignment done. So you should have found your way to this screen through Google Classroom. You also are going to need either the document that goes with it, Gorongosa, Wildcam, Citizen Science, it has a big table on it basically, open and ready to go, or you're going to need a printout of it. Either one will work. Once you have that ready, you are ready to start actually doing a little bit of citizen science and learn about some of the animals in Gorongosa. So first, what is citizen science? Citizen science is where scientists that are working on all kinds of different projects have massive amounts of data, or they need lots of information that they can't necessarily gather all on their own, and they basically put their requests out into the world for help, and anyone can help them, and it helps them go through a lot more data or collect a lot more data and really forwards their research project, and then regular citizens like you or I get to help these scientists do real science. So that's what you're going to do today. Once you find your way here, it should say this Gorongosa Wildcam up here. Down here it says Get Started. So click on that link, Wildcam Gorongosa. Then this will come up. This little tutorial will come up that you can go through if you'd like. I'm going to essentially walk you through what is going on here. Is these scientists that are working in Gorongosa have put camera traps out all through the national park that are taking record of what animals are there. So all these animals have been reintroduced. You saw a little clip of that in the video you watched earlier. There's lots of different species that have been reintroduced after they were decimated from the Civil War, and now the scientists are trying to figure out how they're doing, where are they at, how many are there, what behaviors are they exhibiting, or do they see young, things of that nature. So these camera traps are generally motion activated, so when it detects motion it'll snap a picture or two, and there are thousands and thousands of pictures. So for several years now, the scientists that are working there have been uploading these to this Zooniverse project, and citizens like you and I, classes that have come before you have done this in previous sections of pictures. They've been uploading these every year or so, new pictures that they get out of these camera traps, and they say, help us identify these. So that's what you're going to do. You're going to identify some of the actual animals, species, and what they're doing in Gorongosa. So I'm going to skip through this really quick, X that out, and what you'll see on your screen is a picture. Hopefully it's got an animal in it the first time out, and all the list of different animals over here that it could be. It'll take some practice. There's going to be a lot of animals there that you've never even heard of. I assume you know what a lion is, hopefully. If you're not, you talk. But a civet, do you know what a civet is? Do you have any idea what this animal is right here? Probably not. So it might take you some time to learn some of the different species, but they've got some things up here that will help you. So for example, you can click on pattern, and if the animal you're looking at has horizontal stripes or these sideways stripes or spots, it'll help you narrow it down. It can help you narrow it down by color. Is it a beige animal? Is it a white animal? By horns, do they have little pointy horns? Do they have horns that curve outward or inward? And then tail, do they have a little stubby tail? Do they have a longer tail? Is there a tuft on the end of their tail? And then finally also build. So is it short and stout? Is it really just big in general? Is it a little bitty tiny thing? Is it sort of medium sized with long legs, etc.? So you can click on any one of those, for example, and it'll narrow it down. This one they call lanky. So I'm going to, now I just click stocky. Clear that. Another little trick you might see, not all the pictures have this, but some do. They have this little play button down here, and if it took more than one picture in a row, then you can actually play it, and it might give you a hint of what the animal's doing. So in this case, you can see the animal actually moving. Hit play, there's the two pictures, it's moving. So this one was taken at night, that's why it's black and white. A lot of them will be in color, but some will be at night and be black and white. And then you just start narrowing it down. Now, I know what this animal is because I've identified a lot of these pictures in the past, and when I was a zookeeper, I actually worked in an area of the zoo called the Wilds of Africa, and I've worked with a lot of these animals, and including this particular kind. So I'll give you a couple of hints for identifying this one. It's a pretty big animal. It's a kind of antelope. It has horns right here. In this case, only the male of the species have horns, so that's not necessarily the best way to identify it. It has dark on its legs down here, where it's lighter on top. If you were to see this in color during the day, it would actually be kind of a shaggy gray. And then its neck is really, really shaggy. What you can't see that is a dead giveaway for this particular species is on its butt back here. It has a ring, a white ring. It's kind of a strange marking, but if you see a white ring around its entire rear end, then you know you have this animal, which in this case is a water buck. So this is a water buck. Once you think you figured out what the animal is, you come over to here and you select water buck. How many are there? There's one. It gives you a little description here too. It'll also usually give you, there it goes. So usually you have a picture here of the animal. See, there's that white ring I was talking about right there. And then there's a couple pictures you can click through. There's that shaggy neck I was talking about. They have these big ears and this really shaggy neck. And the males have horns and the females don't. That helps you. Those pictures will help you. So how many do you have? One. What behaviors do you see? Well, that play button there actually tells me it's moving. Are there any young present? Nope. In this case, it's going to ask me the animals that I can see that have horns, and one of them do. So then I hit identify. Now, if there were a second species in this picture, so say there was a warthog down there or something, then I could also identify a second species, go through that same process, so to make sure they understand there's two species in that picture. Now, before you go on for your assignment to make sure that you do this, now you'll need to fill this out. So it says species identification. You'll just put up there water buck, and then something interesting, notable, your thoughts, like in this case it could be, I've never seen a water buck before. I didn't know that was a thing. Or maybe you'll say there was a baby in it, or something interesting that was happening in the picture. Doesn't really matter. Just something notable to you about the picture, something you learned, whatever. And once you've done that, you hit done, and it brings up the next. That one's going to be a tough one to identify. That's not unusual, okay? So even knowing as much as I know, this one's not going to be super easy for me. Actually, I think I know what it is. But at any rate, don't worry about that. If you come across one, you're like, oh, I don't know what that is, that's okay. Go through the process of trying to narrow it down and figuring it out. Do the best you can. The part of the citizen science thing is they know that those people out there identifying these don't necessarily know all these animals really well. So they have many people identify every picture. And if the scientists notice a discrepancy, like half the people are saying this is an impala and the other half are saying it's a kudu or something, then the scientists, that will alert the scientists to go in and check what that really is, and they'll be able to figure it out because they're just going to be better at this than we are. So let's hit play. Now that actually helps a little bit because as it walks forward there, we can see a little bit about its build and how shaggy it is and what its tail looks like, which tells me I really do know what this is. So the giveaway for this one is these horns have this very specific spiral to it, and it's a little shaggy, not quite as shaggy as the water buck, but it's still shaggy. There's a lot of antelope out there that aren't shaggy. So this is a nyala, and it's a male because it has horns. See how he's a little shaggy there? And his horns have this really particular spiral. Oh, this is a young male, so he's got just little spiky horns there. But the mature male is shaggy here, and it has this kind of twisty sort of horn, and you can see that twisty sort of horn right there. Okay, so now that I'm confident it's a nyala, one, it's moving, no young, one of them has horns, identify, don't forget to write down nyala and something interesting about it to you. Done. This one's pretty washed out, but thankfully we can still see the animal there really quick, really easily. So go through the process. This is obviously not an antelope. If you've watched The Lion King, you probably know what this is. This would be Timon. And there's two possibilities. This is another thing to keep an eye out for. So it's a warthog. I'm going to click over here on warthog, but there's actually another thing that the warthogs are commonly confused with that live in the the Gorongosa area. So double check and make sure. There are things called bush pigs out there, and they look a lot like a warthog. Look at that. They actually look very similar, right? So how do you know the difference? There's a few subtleties. So the bush pig tends to be furrier all over. The warthog tends to have less fur on its belly here. But more importantly, the shape of the head. The warthog has this really wide, flat head and these tusks. The bush pig tends not to have that, and the bush pigs also tend to be a little bit smaller. So this little often confused with thing can be super helpful, especially if you're not sure. Like taking a guess, look at the often confused with, pull those pictures up a couple of times and make sure that, oh, actually I think it's that or not. So this one's kind of an interesting one. So here's this dead giveaway that white circle there, but it doesn't look like a normal water buck. Look at it closely. Can you tell why? Look at the proportions. It's a little off, right? This short little neck, these kind of long legs, looks kind of full-like. It's because it's a baby. So mom's probably nearby, but this one's just a really youngster. It's probably not more than 4 to 6 months old. So that might be something that I would put in the comments, that it's a water buck, and it's a baby. And that's not something you see very often, but that's a good sign for Gorongosa and its restoration, right? That the animals they've reintroduced, they are having babies, and that's one of the things that scientists like to see in these pictures, which is why they ask you if there's young present. Okay, so sometimes this will happen, whether you've got a picture of scenery, like, you know, the underbrush and the growth in the trees or whatever it is, and you can't find any animals there, or you have a picture like this where there's probably an animal here and it's probably at night, but it was so close and the flash was so bright, and everything's washed out here. There's no possible way to tell what this is. So what do I do in that case? I'm just going to say no animals present, identify, done. This is one that you'll actually see quite a bit, and this is a really good picture to show you how to identify this one. So this is an antelope of medium size, and the giveaway for what species this is the horizontal coloring. So you have this darker, almost tan, a beige, and then the white belly. If you see that, it's absolutely an impala. It's a really common prey item for lions and leopards. There's quite a few of them in Gorongosa. Oh, this is an interesting one. Now, when you first look at this, you're going to say, there's nothing there. Look closely, make sure. There is something here. It's right here. Let's push play. You can see it move. But it's pretty blurry. But that's okay, because it's still pretty easy to identify, because there's only really 2 possibilities. If it's little and it has stripes and it's a carnivore, which this is, has kind of a cat-like tail, it's either a genet or a civet. And how do you tell those apart? Well, the civet tends to be big and has a very fluffy tail. They both have spots in here, but the tail is the real thing to differentiate it with. So see how these have very clear bands? The civet doesn't tend to do that, and this guy is kind of more slender, which means this is a genet, and it's often confused with that. So that's right there. Look at that big bushy striped tail. It is this. There's one. He's moving, she's moving, I don't know. No young. Identify, done. Don't forget to write it down on your paper. Genet. Hey, that's kind of cool. You don't see carnivores a lot. Here's a monkey, so I'll give you a couple of tips on how to tell the differences in the monkeys. All of the species of primates there are monkeys, so there's no chimps or gorillas or anything like that. There's a couple different kinds of monkeys. There's a Semengo monkey, a baboon, which you'll see a lot of, and the vervet monkeys, which there's quite a few of those too. So the baboons are big, and they have long tails that they kind of like put up a lot, and big heavy faces. That's usually a baboon. The vervet monkey is the one you'll see next most often. So they're littler, they're sort of fuzzy, and they have these little black faces and these white tufts along their sides of their faces there. This is a vervet monkey. The difference between that and a Semengo, the Semengos, you tend to see them in the trees a lot more too, but they are a little bit bigger and their fur is a bit longer than the vervet. There's a classic picture of a baboon. Almost said bamboo. No, he's not a kind of grass. Or she. This is a female. Classic baboon. They spend most of their time on the ground, so that's where you're usually going to see them. They have this tail they hold up a little bit, and then it comes down. They tend to be heavy through the body. The males are heavier in the shoulders too. And the important thing in this picture is look back here. There's something else going on back there. So let's see if we can figure out what that is. There's a little... I think that's another baboon. I feel like it is. I can't tell what this is back here, so I'm just going to ignore that. But I am pretty certain that's another baboon. The only other thing it could be sitting like is like a lion, and that's not a lion. And if that were a lion, this baboon over here would not be so calm. So I think that's a male baboon back there, based on how heavy he is. Okay, so they won't ask you to identify male versus female for the baboons, but they will ask if young are present because they live in troops. They live in large troops, and they'll often have young. So look around really carefully. Sometimes the young will be playing off in the distance, or sometimes even in the trees. So make sure you look around before you identify. Here's one example where I was saying you can do 2 species. So I'll show you how to do that to make sure that you guys are familiar. So I see 2 different species here. There's this youngster antelope. There probably is... Yeah, that actually might be just a younger female Nyala, but full grown. And there's a baboon there. I'm going to hit play and see what else is around. That's pretty much it. Just this Nyala hanging out with this baboon just sitting there as the Nyala walks by. How do I know that's a Nyala? Because the stripes and the spots, and this is a female, which is why she's not so fuzzy and she doesn't have horns. But if I look, see, there's the female. Looks very much like that. So we're going to identify 2. You do the first one. There's 1. She's moving. No young and no horns. Identify. And then before I move on, I'm going to go for the baboon too. Baboon. 1. Just resting. No young. Identify. Now I can hit done. Don't forget. So if you run across the 2 species in your paper here, just go ahead and squeeze in both species that you identified in there as best you can, and then write your comment about it, because each line in that, each row in that table is meant for a different image. And then the ones that don't have anything, just don't write anything for that. Don't say nothing here. Find the ones with the animals, because that's the cool thing anyway. So anyway, we will end it there. 25 images with species total, either entered in digitally and submitted to me, or through the paper and pencil form, whichever. And you can do more than that if you want. If you just sort of, some people find that it's kind of zen and they just kind of just keep going and they see different things. If you see anything really particularly cool, make note of it. Tell us about it. There's some really, I've seen some really cool things there. There was one time I saw a wild dog. If you see that, you have to tell me. Love those. Even take a screenshot of it for me or something, because that's a really rare treat to see. Okay, good luck. Let me know if you have questions.